Welcome back to the Purple Political Breakdown. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back at it again. Today, we're going to be reacting to a Piers Morgan video. I know you guys love my opinions in regards to that. Gonna provide some commentary. The reason why this is interesting, this is from the backlash of the Jordan Peterson debate on Jubilee. Honestly, I should have reacted to it because Jordan Peterson was so nonsensical in that debate, kind of just being one of those overly dramatic debaters that tries to define every term. It was quite frustrating. And something that a lot of people didn't like is he wouldn't solidify a position on whether or not he was a Christian. So this debate or this conversation involves Parker, another kid that was pretty aggressive towards Jordan Peterson, Andrew Wilson, and some other dude. And I'm not sure what they're going to talk about. Andrew Wilson made it seem like he owned Parker, so we'll see. I don't like Andrew Wilson, and I think Parker's kind of a coward, so I'm right in the middle of this. I'll give my honest opinions. Let's dive right into it. Like and subscribe. Trying to
Well,
get to
Pride's
1,000
always been
subscribers.
completely astroturfed. I mean, to be honest, right from the very beginning, it's been astroturfed. It was always
So, from my understanding, what they're about to talk about is in regards to Pride Month, the validity of Pride Month, and whether it's still good for the country. When I first learned about Pride Month and just any kind of month that was given a identity, I didn't know how to feel about it. I don't really have a strong opinion. Honestly, I don't really care too much if I'm being completely blatant, but we'll see what they say and if I agree or disagree.
pumped full of government money, NGO funding. It was pumped full of corporate money. There was an article that came out, you can find in the Drudge Report, it came out today from, I believe it was Daily Telegram. It's pretty interesting. They went over, a lot of the modern Trump administration and what they have done with their executive orders. A lot of companies have begun moving away from trying to kind of fund this, and it hasn't been popular for the last couple of years anyway. There's been a lot of pushback on various large corporations, companies, and NGOs for trying to pump kind of artificially these organizations. One of the things that article points out, which I tend to agree with, is that, hey, look, ultimately, when these companies are doing this, people lose trust for them. You remember there was a big thing with Target not that long ago. Anytime this comes to light, there's actually a backlash. People can kind of see that it's artificially held up. There's no reason for it. It's silly. It has never really been about gay rights. It's
What do
been
you mean there's
about
no reason
weird.
for it? What do you mean?
It's
What do you mean
been
there's no reason?
well, because it's
What do you
always
mean there's no
really been
reason
about.
for it? Right?
Yeah,
They're
I'm
they're
trying to.
bullies like
Do you want me to
you,
answer?
right?
Do you want me to answer the?
I'm gonna address one thing Andrew Wilson said, and I feel like this is something we all can understand. We can recognize where certain movements and ideologies can be co-opted to becoming more than what it was initially intended to be, right? When it comes to pride or just gay rights in general, the idea is a celebration of it being okay to be gay or trans and kind of normalizing it a little bit. Now, how far do we want to go? Always a valid conversation and question because my moral structure really stems from a very reasonable foundation. I'm not religious, but one thing that I recognize is we do want the thriving of humanity, right? And one of the core functions for humanity to thrive is procreation, constantly having babies, all that stuff, right? I'm not one of those people that tries to force people to have sex and all those kind of very, very weird woke right conservatives. But I do think that's an important value in order for humanity to survive. I mean, I'm human after all. Okay? With that said, we can recognize that certain people have identities. I think it is embedded into how they're born. Now, there's certain mental illnesses like gender dysphoria that cause them to think other ways, and you can't really blame that person. The environment around them caused them to be that way. There's a lot of nuance and context. But ultimately, if you're a grown adult and this is the decision you decide to make, so be it. I'm not going to police someone who's doing something within their right to express themselves how they please. We can always have a conversation on scope. But ultimately, pride was just humanizing and normalizing that being gay and being trans is okay. It's not demonic. We've done that throughout history where people thought certain things were demonic, and we've done terrible things to those people who are black, who are witches. So that was the initial purpose. So, yes, it was here to help establish gay rights. Of course it was, Andrew. Don't be lazy with your analysis. I just wanted to say that.
The question or no?
Yeah, you can go ahead, and I'll explain to you why I think there's a reason after.
Okay. Yeah. So there's no real reason for it. It's been about pushing sexual perversions, never really been about anything to do with homosexuals themselves not having rights or having rights. It's never been about that. It's been about weird gay pride parades and all kinds of weird sexual stuff. It
So
really has never been
lazy.
about that. And that's what
Such
the
a
American
lazy
people think. That's
analysis.
what they see. That's why you see companies moving away from it.
No, I don't
Danny?
think that's true. Look, they're gay people, like let's take you for example. You're the reason, right? When I first talked to you, right, we were having a normal debate about, I think, morality, and then you randomly asked me, "What's your, are you a homosexual?"
And you
As if
were,
to put me
right?
down, right?
And you were, right?
Also with
But
and
hang on,
Jay Dyer's
was
doing
I
the same
right
thing.
though? Was I right?
Down,
All
right?
right, let
And then
me.
And you were, right?
what's your, are you a homosexual? As to
And
morality, right? When I first talked to you, right, we were having a normal debate about, I think, morality, and then you randomly asked me, "What's your, are you a homosexual?"
and you
As if to
were,
put me
right?
down, right?
And you were, right?
Also with
But
and
hang on,
Jay Dyer's
was
doing
I
the same
right
thing.
though? Was I
I'm
right?
not a
So, again, this is a lazy point to make. And it really established just because Andrew Wilson can articulate himself well does not mean he knows how to have a genuine conversation. Because when you're in the midst of a conversation and you bring up a marker to make it seem like that person is lesser than, and for you being a very devout Christian, you think gay people are lesser than you're using that to undermine any of the points he's making. So whether he is or he isn't is irrelevant to the conversation and the points being made. Especially, I don't know the context of that conversation in particular, but especially in a situation when you're getting railroaded and the consistency and the logic that you're using is being broken apart, the easiest way to pivot the conversation from what is actually being talked about is to bring up a ad hominem or just bring up something irrelevant to make their attention go somewhere else or make it seem like this person does not have the credibility to engage in this conversation. It's lazy, it's disingenuous, and it is something that Andrew Wilson does consistently.
homosexual. No, I'm
You
married to
said
a
that you were
woman. I'm bisexual.
bisexual. You said that you were
Right.
bisexual. That's
Homosexual is
homosexual.
not the
So I
same
was
as bisexual. Maybe you
there's
can
there's
learn the
certain
definitions of
ways
terms. But
that
the
look, there's
point is
certain
that
ways that people conduct themselves.
People like you and
Hmm.
Jay Dyer,
Uh-huh.
bully LGBTQ
Oh yeah,
people. That's
everyone's
why
bullied.
there's
Yeah, I
pride
know.
because of the
Hmm.
kind of stigmas that you promote.
Okay,
He's
so here's the
correct.
thing that's so funny about this is like if both me and Jay Dyer, both of us assumed that you were a homosexual and both of us were right. That's what's so funny about it. We
Again,
both assumed
why are
you
you
were
saying I'm a
gay, and
homosexual?
we were both correct that you were
Andrew,
gay.
Andrew, is there
So the
anything
point is
wrong
that
with
we were
him being
you
gay?
go, Park.
Huh?
Is there anything wrong with him being gay,
There's
Andrew?
a problem with you guys supporting NGO fund.
So, Parker asked a direct question that correlated with the point I just made because the only reason why you bring a question up like that is to undermine his points and his credibility. He asked him very clearly, is there something wrong with being gay? Andrew Wilson didn't answer the question. He pivoted it to something else entirely. Because he knows, we know, if he did answer the question, it makes it very clear who he is. So, in the midst of the conversation, if I were to reverse the strategy he just implemented, I could do something as simple as this: you're homophobic. Anything you say in the conversation we're having has an underlying principle that you don't like gay people, that you don't respect gay people. You don't think gay people are on the same wavelength as you as a white Christian male. It's easy to do. It's easy to destroy your credibility by pointing up very clear, determining characteristics of how you act on a consistent basis. But at that point, we're not having a genuine conversations of the substance matter. But it's an Andrew Wilson strategy. So if I'm Parker in that situation, I would hammer that question down to find out exactly the type of person you are.
Funded kind of AstroTurf program to promote rights, which aren't even about promoting rights.
Was that a response to what he just said?
The whole ordeal here is, but well, what's the prompt, Parker? The prompt is about pride. And so you're supporting an AstroTurf.
He pivoted.
Completely
because he knew he would have
NGO
gotten
funded
destroyed.
thing. It has nothing to do with gay rights at all. And people don't like it, Parker. They don't like it, Parker.
Well, Parker,
So
I
that
would
wasn't
ask
an
you.
answer
I
to
would
my-
ask Parker this. Look, I mean, look, Andrew, you said
That's my
some
question.
things which I completely disagree with about this issue. You said women will never truly understand why men find homosexuality so depraved. We don't think there's a problem there. We know there's a problem there. I'm a man. I don't find homosexuality remotely depraved. I think people's sexuality is what it is. So I don't agree with you with some of the statements you've made. However, Parker, I am increasingly bemused why, when there are so many important things in the world to worry about, we devote a whole month to gay pride. Why do we?
There are plenty of things that we specifically have months for to celebrate that I think are incredibly important. This, in this specific example, is incredibly important because of the dehumanization and the bigotry espoused specifically by people like Jay Dyer and Andrew Wilson, and explicitly kicking people off of their panels because they're gay, right, or because they're homosexual, which I think is incredibly ridiculous.
But you know
right?
as well as I do, Parker.
Can I please finish?
If you
Can I please
compare
finish,
it,
Piers?
look, well, hang on. I'll say, if you go back 35, 40
So this is another example of Piers Morgan being inconsistent, never really caring about a sense of neutrality or moderation. He has a point he wants to be made. He allows the side that he agrees with to say everything they got to say, but someone else responding to a direct question gets interrupted. Are we surprised? No. But it's always appropriate to point it out every single time it happens.
years, I would completely agree with you. But the idea that that is still the case today, I just don't feel it. Do you? I mean, certainly
Piers,
young
have you
people,
never been on Twitter?
in particular, do not. It's just moved
Piers,
on. hasn't it?
respectfully, how would you know as a straight person? Like, how would you, do you
Look,
experience
Piers,
it?
look,
Why are you assuming my
I want
sexuality?
to talk about
That's
Piers.
a
I want to talk
pivot,
about my
Piers.
You've
experience
talked
when I
about
went viral. Piers, when I went viral, right? I had people message, saying, calling me the F slur, saying I had a gay lisp, right? When I'm married to a woman, right? If I'm not even a homosexual, and if people are bullying me for that, I can't imagine what actual homosexuals have to go through. So,
Well, what
there's
is, if you don't mind me
constantly-
asking, given it's now been sort of raised, and I'm not quite sure, are you straight? Are you bisexual? What's the
I'm
deal?
bisexual. I've been married to a woman happily for 5 years, and we're monogamous.
Okay, all
Two
right.
gaytheists. I want to chime in.
All right.
We have two gaytheists on the panel that have said that I
See, like
bullied
this
them.
kind of
and
behavior. Look at this behavior.
yeah, that's called a joke.
It's not a joke. Just because you phrase everything that you say negatively as a joke does not make it a real joke. It wasn't funny. It actually was a trash joke. It was, right? It wasn't a good one. Also, there's no friends on this panel right now. A joke to say to a friend has value. A joke that has a certain level of truth has value. A joke that is meant to completely demean your opposition that you do not like and they don't like you is not a joke. Not at all. Nice try, though. Nice try.
That's called a joke,
Yeah,
sensitive
so
man.
funny, Jay Dyer.
Oh my
It's a
God, look at this
homophobic joke.
behavior.
You-
This behavior is
this
out
guy-
of
You are
control.
two gaytheists.
It's too
so
much
it's
behavior.
not
Bad
exactly-
behavior.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. Are you guys Christians? I thought we are supposed to be loving to thy neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
the only
love
thing-
also includes
but-
telling you when it's wrong.
Don't
so.
you love trans people, Parker? You said that you would date a trans person. Remember that? Or was
Yeah,
it-
and what's wrong with
What does that have to do with... Honestly, I'm just gonna let it go. They're just fighting, they're bickering. Let it go. I don't have to police everything just because I do not like Andrew Wilson. With that said, I do want to, at the very least, provide a different point in this conversation. Even though Parker was cut off because Piers is a fake moderator, I do think his answer or where it was leading to, I don't know if it was going to be strong enough to enforce the idea that we need a whole month for Pride. Maybe it is valuable to have a whole month. I'm unsure. I don't know if there's really any value to it. I think celebrating it for like a day, I think is fine, to be honest, but a month, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the reasons why it was made into a month because there's a lot of monetary gain to get from it beyond the movement, which there's some validity towards what Andrew Wilson was saying there. Now, obviously, some of the underlying reasons why he believes that is because he hates gay people. He's homophobic. But ultimately, the whole month, I don't think is worth it, right? We have whole days that I do think has more established value in terms of what it means for the country as a whole, right? For example, if you're religious, Christmas is for Jesus Christ, for the birth of Jesus Christ, quote unquote. I'm not going to go into the details on whether or not he was actually born on December 25th. We got things like Good Friday, where he rose. We got things like Martin Luther King's Day, for the guy that was so pivotal in establishing civil rights. We got something like July 4th, the independence of America, the greatest country in the world, that allowed us to even have these type of conversations. So there's just days that exist in America that does its job. Does its job. I feel like instead of a month for Pride, if we had a day and made it a federal holiday, I think it would do two things. One, I know it's going to be taken away a month, so all the leftists will be upset initially, but over time they would recognize that you get a full day to celebrate who you are. You can have a parade on that day if you really wanted to. You can do a lot of things in a day. It's fine. But also, you make it a federal holiday, and what else that's going to do? I mean, come on. There's going to be no complaining from people on the right because they don't have to work and they get paid. So there's good things for both sides there. A whole month for this type of celebration, I'm be honest, that doesn't move me. Pretty much any like month-long celebration doesn't move me because it's really only celebrating a specific demographic of people, and then the other demographic of people who is not like part of that identity, they're like, bro, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this, right? And I understand that. Trust me, I understand that. Even someone who is obviously brown understands a whole month for African Americans is not going to appeal to all the other races, right? So a day for that specific identity to celebrate it and making it a federal holiday, I feel like we all can get on board with that. Let me know if I'm wrong about that one.
I mean,
that.
I think that
What's
you're
wrong
more,
with that?
I guess you are more loving than me than Parker. I wouldn't date a trans person. But
Okay,
hey,
okay,
he's
is that
right.
supposed to be like
Too
a
many
critique of
atheists.
me?
So the
Wait,
problem
what
is
happened to being
that
loving?
these guys
I
can't give an
asked you as
account
Christians.
for the
I called
good.
for you as Christians to be loving.
All they've
And both
talked
of you did
about
not
is
show
what's
loving. You
right
just
and
You don't
showed
know what
being,
loving
you just showed being
means. You don't even know what
bigoted.
that
They
means.
can't
Oh,
give
let's
an
not
account
let's
for
not
what's
talk over
good.
each other.
Let us continue.
Ethics in the sexual domain, which talked about Peterson, we were talking about what was good for men.
Yeah.
And whether Tate was good or Peterson was good. And now we're talking about ethics in the sexual domain, which there's no basis in their worldview for anything to be morally,
What's the argument for
objectively
that?
right or wrong, other
Why
than
would
their
anyone
personal
believe that?
preferences. So if there are,
Why would
if there's
anyone
nothing
believe that, Jay?
objectively
You're just
wrong,
making a
there's
claim.
no reason why bigotry is wrong. Why is bigotry?
All right. I feel like maybe they'll do this, but this is very important because people like this, who honestly, a lot of these people are fake Christians, but they can always derive towards a higher power, quote unquote, if you believe in that, of course. But they can always utilize their logic in a foundational principle that is a higher power. It's easy to do for them. It doesn't really take a lot of effort. They can go to a simplistic scripture that they can completely mischaracterize, but they always have that crutch. If you are an atheist or if you're agnostic like I am, in order for you to dive into conversations, especially when someone is trying to find your moral foundation and moral ethics, when they have this certain level of moral superiority in this circumstance, you need to be able to articulate in a very simplistic manner that resonates with people on where your morals come from and how they work. Now, people like this may try to break it apart, but that's why it's very important to have strong foundational values. It's very important to do that. Know what they are. So, or actually, let me add a kind of counter to that. Or you just understand his moral ethics by being studied up on the Bible, like someone like, I believe his name was Alex O'Connor, and then you can dive into his moral principles and break that apart from the Christian Bible, because that's also a very effective strategy as well, because a lot of these people are fake Christians. There's no way you can act like Andrew or act like this guy right here and think that you're really a Christian. I'm gonna be honest, not at all. Because if Jesus saw how you guys were acting, he'd be like, bro, you guys are not acting Christian like at all. You guys are acting like bigots. You guys are acting like assholes. So two ways to go about it, but that is very important if you want to dive into these type of conversations where people have this crutch that is religion. I'm not saying religion is a bad thing. I believe there's a lot of value in religion. I just don't believe in it like other people. I'm more of agnostic towards it. But for the leftists, I'm just giving them a tip. And if all this stuff is real, then I think that's perfectly fine. If you believe it, you might be right, I might be wrong, and it's okay to use that foundation. But I don't even think these guys are real Christians. So this doesn't apply to you if you are a real Christian.
Wrong.
Well, I want
Whoa,
support your
okay.
claim. Don't run from your claim. Support it. Right? We have no. You're saying we as atheists have no basis of morality. Support that.
Yeah, no epistemic basis for getting an ought from an is.
Yeah, that's a claim. Okay. Well, you're saying atheists
No, it's an
can't
argument.
account
It's a
for
famous
morality,
argument.
right? You're saying that atheists can't account for morality. So what's the argument for that?
You can't get an ought from an is the argument. Back to Hume.
It looks like you don't know what an argument is. Come on, reason. Try to go from one line of reasoning to another. Do you know what an argument
You
is?
cannot get an
Coward?
ought from an is. You're an atheist.
That's
In a
just
materialistic
okay, but what does that
worldview,
have to do
there's
with
no ought.
atheism?
I don't think he's really understanding what he's trying to say. I think it's pretty clear what he's trying to say here. So this guy's sparring a little bit. But to be fair, if he just doesn't understand, then it's this guy's job to elaborate, right? There's two things. He doesn't understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but not everybody's me. But elaborate. I mean, if you have an argument, you should be able to elaborate. So he's asking a fair question, even though he doesn't understand what you're saying.
What does that have to do
Elaborate.
with atheism?
In a materialistic, atheistic worldview, there are no oughts.
First of all, I'm not a
You
materialist.
don't know the basic problem
and that's
of
just
ought
another
from is?
claim. That's just
It's
another
not a
claim.
claim,
Can
it's
you
an
support a
argument.
claim?
It's a famous historical.
Look,
You don't know
you're
the
just
difference between a
coward.
claim
You
and an
made a
argument.
claim. You can't defend it.
It's an argument. It goes back to David Hume.
Can you tell us
It's
what
an
an
You don't know-
argument
you
is?
didn't even know
claim,
that.
right?
You don't know
Look,
the difference.
The kid on the left is right. You're not making an argument. You just keep on repeating what you're saying. Sorry, I don't like to eat and talk, but I'm eating. It is what it is. You got to elaborate the substance behind what you're saying. Someone else shouldn't have to articulate it for you. Sounds like this is what it sounds like to me. You read it from a book or you've seen the quote from somewhere, and then you're just using it. You don't really understand what that means. That's what it sounds like to me. So elaborate, substantiate it, break it down. It's simple. Come on.
Look what just happened. Look what just happened. This guy said.
What just happened is that you didn't know the difference between an argument and a
Why are you
claim.
over talking to me? Why are you scared? Let me talk, right? You just claimed that atheists don't have a foundation of morality. I asked you to defend it, and then you said you can't get an ought from an is. What the heck?
That's the argument. That's
where are you
correct.
going to
It's
get from
called
that
an
premise,
argument.
right? You can't derive
It's an
that.
argument. It's not a premise. It goes back to David Hume. You just didn't know that.
Okay, can we get a
People are gonna think that he could, bro. He couldn't substantiate the claim that he made at all. I'm just saying you can't, whatever ought to and is not enough to substantiate an argument. You need a lot more foundation. And you had it, to be honest. You could have derived everything from a religious moral principle, a higher power that I don't need to break down your argument. Do better. Don't be a bot.
I think
Andrew,
we're
you
going,
can't give an
guys,
answer
guys.
to it.
I think
I'm
we're
sorry
moving
that you
slightly
don't
off topic. Let's bring it back to Pride Month. I want to play something which has had a lot of people talking on social media. This is Sesame Street, where all the puppets holding hands, making up the Pride flag, and they say, "On our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world where every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy Pride Month." I guess I would say, Parker, again, the problem with this is
Go ahead.
it's this kind of enforced virtue signaling. It reminds me, in a way, for very different reasons, the day in the George Floyd fallout when everyone had to do a black square on their Instagram or somehow they were racist. And I refused, and everyone called me a racist. I went, why does putting a black square on my Instagram make any difference to anything? Again, with this, if you don't go along with the Pride Month stuff, then somehow you must be homophobic, is the kind of way this all seems to work. And I don't like that. I don't understand why we have to have any more these enforced
Easy
things
answer, Parker.
where
This is a
everywhere you go
layup.
for
Come
a
on.
whole month, everything's Pride. Why? Why can't everyone just get on with their lives?
Easy answer.
Studies show that strength training burns more fat than cardio alone and is critical.
Like a way that I would respond to this is by
Code Piers, Piers.
Is it? If I had a sponsor and I don't use the sponsor, does that make sense? Like maybe under all the suits and the shirts, Piers Morgan is jacked. But I don't know.
For your discount. That's getjackedup.com.
Yeah, so like a way that I would respond to this is by saying that because of the bigotry and dehumanization that exists in our society, it's important to have these things for
Parker, this was a layup, and I don't think you're going to. I don't think you're gonna hit a home run, or I don't think you're gonna convert.
acceptance to decrease the level of bullying that exists in our society targeted towards the LGBTQ plus community. Now, no one's saying that you have to go to Pride, Piers. No one's saying that you have to involve yourself with Pride. When I go
Okay.
outside, I live in Los Angeles. I don't see rainbow flags everywhere. So I'm confused what you're talking
In Los
about. You walk down the
Angeles,
street and just...
you must be
Yeah.
joking, but you can barely move in Los
live in Los
Angeles.
Angeles.
I've got a house in Beverly Hills. You might as well put a pride flag over the whole place.
I'm sorry. I've been to those areas. Not Pride flags aren't everywhere. And one, you live in Beverly Hills, right? That's specifically like not even right next to downtown. So that's where most of the rainbow flags would be if you've
But
actually been
here's
to
my
LA
point.
recently.
It's my serious point to you.
No, you can't. Pierce, you got railroaded. You made a claim about it being everywhere. Parker completely debunked you. And then you're now pivoting. Oh, this is actually my serious claim. After you asked this question that honestly had nothing to do with the clip you showed. You saw it didn't make sense to me how you showed a Sesame Street thing and then you correlated it to cancel culture. I don't think any of us, well, hope not, thinks that canceling someone over the fact that they don't celebrate your pride is okay. I think that is cringe, and that's why people get annoyed, right? It's okay if a Sesame Street wants to showcase acceptance and love. It's a similar thing when you see another TV show goes like, God loves you, right? I feel like it's the same thing. It's just showcasing a certain level of love through a very specific lens, whether it's through pride or whether it's through Christianity. It's the same principle. I know certain people just don't hold them the same, but that's fine. They're the same principle. And then you try to correlate that to cancel culture. It was kind of weird.
If you actually want to do something constructive for, say, the trans community, for example, wandering around with LGBTQ plus, and no one can ever remember now how many letters and digits there are on these.
You just said it.
It gets but it gets bigger and bigger. And I've seen one with 2 in it and all sorts of stuff, a 2-spirit, whatever. It's all.
All it is IA plus.
Yeah, I know, but then
That's
there's
it.
2 and everything.
Pierce is not completely wrong here.
It gets ridiculous, right? And this is the problem with these things. It's never.
It does
ending.
get
It's
ridiculous.
like there were 2 genders, then there were 10, then there were 80, then there were 100. All of it's nonsense to me. However,
wasn't like this,
however,
then that,
if you
but-
want to think that, it's a free world. Here's my point. if you actually want to make a constructive difference to, say, the trans community and trans rights and protect trans people, then the absolute worst way to go about that is the way that the trans lobby has tried to do it, by eroding women's rights in things like women's sport. That has
There we
exposed
go.
so many trans people to mockery, abuse, and the rest of it. And I would say that rather than spending all this time and effort and money on flags in Pride Month, what about just actually getting people together to understand that eroding women's rights is the worst possible thing to promote trans rights? Would you accept that?
Okay, so then if we were going to be talking about eroding women's rights, we'd have to talk about people that, someone like Andrew Wilson supports, like Donald Trump, who was held civilly liable of sexually abusing a woman, who bragged about
Well,
walking
hang on,
the
let's
changing rooms.
stick to my question. Don't bring Trump into it.
I promise you I'm making a point relative to this.
All right.
He bragged
Smoky
about
man
walking
bad. Smoky man bad. Smoky man bad.
You're very childish. He bragged about walking
All you can do is focus on me. You can't even answer to his question.
He answered his question numerous times. Andrew Wilson is one of the most sensitive, fake, tough guys I've seen on the internet. One of. I'm not gonna say the most. He's one of. I don't know why he brought up Andrew. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be very honest. I don't know why he's bringing up Andrew, but I'm curious to see where this goes. I do want him to answer the direct question, though. I am very curious.
He's just.
I'm promising I'm answering right now. You're cutting me off.
But Smoky man bad.
You're cutting me off. I'm trying to answer it right now. Respectfully, I'm trying to answer it right now, but you're not allowing me to.
Okay, well, answer without distracting into Trump and stuff. Just answer the question.
Well, I'm giving an explanation, right? So he bragged about walking to the changing rooms of girls in Miss USA because he quote unquote owns the place to inspect them without
Forget
consent.
Trump. Forget Trump.
Oh my God, Piers! I can't, bro. Piers Morgan loves to protect his best friend. It's so cringe. Everything else is on the table. You can say whatever you want. Oh, almost. He had some integrity when it came to the N word. That is when it's over the line. You can't say the N word. That's when it's over the line. But you talk about Daddy Trump, Piers Morgan gonna be mad. He's gonna be upset. But if they brought up Joe Biden, oh, free reign, go crazy. So cringe.
I promise you, I'm making a point here. Would you let me?
You have to
finish,
get to the
please?
point a bit quicker. Come on.
All three. You've been interrupting him every single time. Piers Morgan has no integrity, bro. I swear. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's very obvious he's so fake in terms of being non-biased. It's ridiculous.
I promise you I am. I've had 15 seconds. Okay, so specifically, right, people like Andrew Wilson do not call that type of stuff out when it's explicitly harmful towards women's rights.
You're playing what's about.
Oh my God, Piers Morgan, shut the fuck up. Let him answer the question. Let him answer the question. Like, you can't be giving everybody else all these pivoted, nonsensical, tangent answers. But and at that point, when it goes against the people you care and like, that's when you speak up and become a moderator.
I'm more interested in what about because I haven't done that. So as somebody like me,
not talking about you.
Parker, talk to me, right? As somebody who has always supported,
I was going to refer to trans
as someone who's always supported
trans
rights, trans
this
people's rights.
Well,
I have always supported trans people's rights to fairness, equality, and safety, right to the point that it began to erode into women's rights to the same thing. And that's my point to you. Why waste all this time, effort, and money on virtue signaling for Pride Month, when in fact there's a real problem going on which remains unresolved because too many people on the left and too many young people go along with this absolute farce of trans athletes in women's sport, which exposes trans people around the world to extra mockery and abuse.
But you'll condemn the mockery and abuse from people like Jay Dyer, and these
all
are the
he has is
mockers.
ad hominem.
You condemn that.
Well, I'm saying you're going to get the mockery when there is something so obviously grotesquely unfair.
Can I respond?
Parker, you got your hand up very politely, so answer me without mentioning Donald Trump or Andrew Wilson.
Stop being a bitch.
Yeah, okay. So I can't mention the person on the panel. But specifically, in terms of trans people are not specifically.
I'm be honest, Parker. You can't be respectful in these scenarios, and I'll take about the bitch stuff. It just triggers me when hypocrites are so freaking confident. Parker, you gotta push through. You know, you got to push through. Where's that moxie? Where's that confidence you had when you tore down Z? This is the point where you got to push through. Push through Pierce's bias, moderation. Push through Andrew Wilson's lack of integrity. Push through. Say what you got to say. If they mute you, then they mute you. If they kick you off the panel, then they're censoring you. You can't be polite when you deal with people like this because they have no moral integrity. So you gotta push through when you're having these debates, Parker. Now you're getting clout. You're getting into the big leagues. You know, you do things that I think is stupid. But if you want to engage with people like this who have no true character, you have to push through. You have to be confident. You got to get your point across, and you got to push through.
Going to be harmful towards women in these particular spaces, given that they've met the conditions of multiple years of HRT.
Have you been
Okay,
hang on.
Let me finish.
Parker, you can't make it.
Parker,
literally, as you've said this, today it's been revealed.
I'm finishing, Piers.
Today,
Piers, I'm trying to
wait
explain.
a minute.
I'm trying to explain, Piers.
You talked about safety.
This is disingenuous.
Literally today, the Algerian gold medal winner in the Paris
haven't been able to
Olympics
speak.
women's boxing has been revealed to be a man who should.
No, she didn't. We're just spreading misinformation. What? She's not a man at all. She had a genetic condition, but she's not a man. Okay. All right. Do I want to continue this? Not really. I'm gonna be honest. Not really. This is just a disingenuous conversation. And Parker and this guy do not have the well, this guy a little bit. I don't know. I think I'm pretty much done with this conversation. So we're gonna end the video here. It's just nasty and disingenuous. With that said, hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe. I wanna see more conversations. I wanna see more political debates. Hopefully genuine ones. This one is just sloppy and disgusting. And there's no value to this one. So you have a good one. Take care. Peace.